Everyone, and welcome to this tutorial of Nurture specific to the art subject, specific to drama. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to get Nurture set up, how to do your curriculum boundary, set a task and also generate feedback in order to save teachers time and also improve student outcomes. So the very first thing that we have to do is install Nurture if we haven't done so already. So at the top of your channel you just need to select add a tab. You then will need to search for Nurture and add that as an app, and that's it. Once you have it installed, it's installed for all of your students. No need for messy installs on the student end. It'll just be plugged into your Teams, nice and easy. Once we have Nurture installed, then you'll be asked a number of questions about what subject you teach, your students, etc., your role. And you'll also be asked to upload your curriculum. So you'll see here for this channel, I have a number of documents uploaded for curriculum, including I have drama curriculum here, I have scope and sequence, I could upload my yearly plans, etc. And the idea of this is in order to give Nurture context. So as we know, AI leverages information from the internet in order to respond with human-like intelligence. But one of the things that it can struggle with is context. So while Nurture's AI will have some knowledge of the drama curriculum, by uploading these documents, it makes sure that all of its outputs are far more accurate to your specific curriculum and what you are teaching. So that's our curriculum boundary. And once we've that done, we can then start a new task. So to create a new task, I just simply select the purple button saying new task. I then decide if I wanted a graded assessment or ungraded. Also, I have the option, once I've created my assessment, it'll generate a task code that I can share with my colleagues. So if a colleague of mine has already created an assessment, I would simply just copy in the code that they have for that assessment there. So I'm going to select graded formative assessment. It's going to ask me what I want this assessment to be about. So I'm going to say exploring character expressions in a dramatic play. I'm going to say I want it as an essay style question, 25 marks. I'm going to toggle this curriculum boundary piece. So what that instructs the Nurture assistant to do is to pull information off of those curricular documents that I have in the background, okay? Also just to note as well, in my description here, I could ask to generate 2 short essay style questions. I can make it even my prompt more specific here in what style I'd like, etc. So just to make sure the more I put into my prompt, the more accurate my output is going to be later on. So I'm then going to, also if I already have an assessment on this that I am pretty happy with the description, etc., and I don't want to use the Nurture assistant for generating the actual task, I can literally just select skip assistant and create this task manually. So this piece is optional. So I'm going to go generate task. And the Nurture assistant then will create a description for me. So for example, based on my input, the Nurture assistant has come up with the following description. In dramatic play, how can the use of movement and voice contribute to creating believable character expressions? Lovely. Okay, so I really like that. We'll see here on the right hand side that I have my Nurture assistant. So what this is essentially like, imagine you have a colleague that's helping you to create the assessment. So it's not going to override anything you do and it's totally optional, but it can allow us to enhance our assessments even further. So for example, I could ask in the description, please provide some guidelines for the students in answering these questions. So I could just add further opportunities for scaffolding, for example. So then the assistant is going to generate some guidelines. So ensure your answer provides clear explanation, use specific examples. Lovely. So I'm just going to say yes. So there's other things I could do here as well. If I have students who have English as an additional language, I could potentially ask the assistant here to provide the description both English and let's say Portuguese or Mandarin, and it'll generate that as well. So that's a nice kind of UDL practice of, if we're always providing the assessments bilingually, we really include those students from the outset. So that's our task description piece. Then you'll see this upload attachments button. So the idea of this is, again, remember our scaffolding. So this could be that I upload a PowerPoint resource or a handout that I would have covered with my students in relation to this topic in order to just further hone in their skills and give them an area that they can refer to answer this. So the students will see this upload attachment piece. We see the Nurture Assistant has created some learning outcomes, again, based off our curriculum boundary, which is our curricular documents in the background. So, for example, analyze how movement and voice can shape character expression. I have the option to, I can delete learning outcomes, add new learning outcomes, etc. So I can toggle them around here. So feel free to move those and adjust them as you so wish. The grading, so it's kept the marks at 25, and we see then, so this piece is really helpful. So the assistant then has actually created a marking scheme for this assessment for us, okay? So for example, it said for question 2, allocated 12.5 marks, marking is out of 5 for outlining the importance of improvisation, 5 for techniques used, etc., okay? But one really important thing is if we have a marking scheme already for an assessment, so I gave the example earlier of you might have an assessment that you've used for years with your students and you might have an attached marking scheme for that. And you want the assistant not to generate a new marking scheme, but to answer off of that marking scheme. We simply just upload it as an attachment here, okay? So I can upload a marking scheme here, but most importantly, I have to make sure that I delete the marking scheme here, okay? Because otherwise, those could be in conflict and it might threaten the accuracy of our grading later on. Same goes for rubrics. If I have a rubric for an existing assessment, I can upload that and the assistant will mark based off of that rubric later on. So that's a really helpful tool that our teachers are using very frequently, okay? So then I just publish my task and, oh, I have no marking scheme, so it won't let me publish. So I publish my task and the students then get a notification that a new task is being created. And then we go to the fun side, which is the student side and the grading and the feedback. So once I've published my assessment, my students then will get a notification. And on the student end, the student completes the assessment in either Word doc or PDF. They upload their work to submit it. They have to submit their confidence, so they choose an emoji based on their confidence level, so whether it's high, neutral, or low. And then they have to do a little submission reflection. And the idea of this is again to give further context. So the assistant then has context on how the student felt about the assessment, what obstacles they had, and can generate this in their feedback later on. One other really interesting feature that we have is the customizable feedback piece. So, for example, as you go through the feedback, there might be tweaks that you would like to make. And rather than having to prompt on an individual student basis, we've introduced the customizable feedback feature. And basically, what this is like a master prompt to tell the assistant how to respond all of the time. So, for example, the instructions I've included here are as follows. Please address the student directly in the personal comment. Generate the feedback in language suitable for a student at the reading age of 12. Use direct extracts from the student's work to explain your points. There might be other pieces I include. Again, that bilingual piece would be an example. So respond in both English and X language. It's just a really handy tool. So then to generate the student comments, so I'm going to go into the student submission. I see my students' work here and I see their submission piece and their confidence. And then on the right hand side, I have my Nurture Assistant to help me generate my feedback and generate my grade. So the assistant has reviewed the student's work and has given the following feedback. So it'll always structure what went well, even better if, unless you instruct it in the customizable instructions to format it differently. So, for example, in what went well, the assistant has said clear identification of characters' emotions. Student did an excellent job of describing the mother's emotions in the play. Lovely. Okay. But one of the things that I think about this feedback is maybe it could be a bit wordy. So, I'm going to just instruct it. This feedback is a little verbose. Please shorten it. Okay. So I return that. We'll see as well, I have my feedback settings here. Again, that'll bring us to our customizable feedback, so we can do this at any stage, okay? Just to note though, that if you make changes to this, and then you go into a student that you haven't seen before, you may need to reset the chat in order to push that instruction back out to the assistant, as it will all have automatically generated its feedback. So the assistant has shortened that for me. I'm going to say yes. So it's asked me, do I want this as the student's feedback comment? So I replied yes. The assistant then, using the marking scheme or the marking scheme I've uploaded, or the marking scheme it has generated, is then going to correct the student's work. So it is replied, based on the marking scheme, question 1, structure 2 out of 3, no clear introduction, examples 1 out of 2 because the student didn't use them fully. And we see that it's literally marked based off of that. So I'm just going to say, do you agree with this grade? I'm going to say yes. If I don't agree with the grade, I can just respond to the assistant here in the chat, and the assistant will generate that. Or I can actually override it and I can pop it in myself. Just looking here on the left, so we see, so this student actually did quite well. So the assistant hasn't selected learning outcomes that they need feedback on, but if the student did, it would literally select the learning outcomes the student needs feedback on for us. It'll populate the personal feedback comment, and it'll populate the marks as well for the assessment. I then just toggle between one student and another and complete this task for each individual student. And then when I'm finished, I would publish the feedback for all of my students. So all of my students get feedback at the same time. Common misconception is that teachers think once they've the feedback completed that it's pushed out to the students. That's not the case, and for a very deliberate reason, which is we've seen it ourselves in classrooms. If one student gets feedback and another student doesn't, it can create conflict and general mayhem. So we've decided to push all of the feedback out to the students at the same time. One last little piece, if you're still here with me, is this little piece basically is all of our learning outcomes. And we see then under each learning outcome, we can see the initials of students that needed feedback on a specific learning outcome. So we know ourselves as teachers that formative assessment is informative assessment, and it gives us as teachers information on what the gaps in students' learning are. Usually we would assess this by observation, we might potentially grades, but here with Nurture we can see very, very clearly the exact learning outcome that our students need further help on, and bring this forward into the next lesson in order to close the feedback loop and also drive students' learning forward. So if you're still here, thanks for listening. This was our tutorial on how to use Nurture for the arts, specifically drama. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me on emer@gonurture.com. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your feedback on how Nurture has helped you to save time and improve student outcomes. Thanks for watching.